Hello and happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday to all.
Welcome to the Two Matts regular question and answer session brought to you by the New European.
In which we deploy wisdom.
We do, lots of it. Are you ready to deploy?
Yeah.
First question.
Was Kia Starma right to let Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party from Desi in New Cross? Thanks, Desi. What do you reckon, Matt?
I don't think he was, no.
I don't either.
I think it's a massive mistake. I think it's
very
sort of
foolish.
Smacks. I kind of understand why he thought he would want to, because, 2 weeks on the run and all of this, wouldn't it be great to see them falling apart? But not Natalie Elphicke, I don't think.
No. I mean...
Right? She in very recent history, she's been slagging the Labour Party off left, right, and centre.
And she's crazy for very, very tough immigration asylum policy. She's supported Rwanda, small boats, all that. Yeah. One of the things that alarmed me was she said she was joining Labour because of its toughness on immigration policy, which I would personally say is off message, but there you go. Yeah. I like what Neil Kinnock said. He said that Labour is a very broad church, but churches have walls and there are limits. Yeah. I agree with that. I think the problem with this is that when I saw the alert that Natalie Elphicke had defected, I thought, oh, she's gone to reform. Yeah. I just thought she's gone off with 30p Lee and Farage and, But when I saw Labour, I thought, hang on, am I missing something here? Yeah. But I do think that the short-term implications, I think, are minimal, right? Although a lot of people, very senior people, are very unhappy in the party. But I think the general impression that it will strengthen is that Starmer has no values, no limitations, no discrimination. Yeah. He stands for nothing. He embraces everyone. It makes him look ever so slightly desperate. That picture of him with the Labour mugs having a cup of tea.
Cheap,
it's like this guy is about to become Prime Minister, it appears. And, he really shouldn't be having to let Natalie Elphicke enjoy a few months as a Labour MP before she stands down.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, actually, if Kia Starma wanted to be brutally cynical, I'd have told her to sling a hook, but I'd have put it out that she was trying to get it.
Oh yeah.
What a great narrative for Labour. But
also don't forget that one of Labour's keynote policies is its position on sexual assault and violence against women and girls. Now Natalie Elphicke's husband Charlie Elphicke, predecessor as Dover MP, is currently in the jug for sexual assault, and she defended him, saying the reason he'd been targeted, in her words, was because he was so attractive and attracted to women. Now, I don't think someone who says that publicly should be welcome in Labour's ranks. I just think it's wrong.
So, here's my sort of contentious point on this, is that I kind of give her a 70% pass on that. Only in the sense that she, if you're someone's wife and your husband has done something that horrible and that awful, your head's going to be scrambled, I think. I mean, it may quite possibly be that she was aware of all, I don't know, but
which is why it was a bad idea for her to become his replacement.
I totally agree with that. Totally.
So what a spouse says about their husband, wife, in these contexts is obviously deeply subjective, often traumatized.
Exactly.
They may well have been victims themselves.
Yeah.
But if you then say, and not only do I think he's the victim, but I'm going to replace him and go into Parliament, and then say I'm going to go into the Labour Party, which prides itself on being the party of women's rights and so on. I mean, there is a limit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And interestingly, I thought Amal Rajan was brilliant on what must have been Thursday morning on the Today programme, and he had Annalise Dodds on, and he said, who is the shadow minister for women, amongst other things, and was saying, are you happy that this woman is now a member of Parliament for the Labour Party? And she said, well, she's apologised and that was all dealt with a long time ago. Well, I think there's that you can't have that as the party line. That it's okay just to say so.
And it presents the Starmer Labour parties as a sort of 24-hour shop. We never close.
The other thing that Amal was brilliant about was drawing the parallels between the treatment of Diane Abbott.
Yeah.
And
waited a year
for an inquiry, and as he quite rightly said to her, it should take a week for somebody to sort that out. But
it made me think, and I mean, shouldn't perhaps overanalyze things that are happening at speed, but that Starmer is more worried than he lets on about the election. And this happened in the same week that Rachel Reeves did a slightly peculiar speech about how the Tories were going to be gaslighting the British on the economy. And what she was really doing was preparing the ground for what Labour fears will be good or improved economic indicators.
Yeah.
And I think these are two examples of, this isn't reassurance strategy. This is coming from a place of alarm and fear and lack of confidence. And at the moment, right now, in the final months before the election, what Starmer, Reeves, all the key figures in the Labour top team need to give is not a sense of complacency, but they do need to be confident. And part of confidence is saying no sometimes. Sorry, Natalie Elphicke, you don't have a place in my Labour Party.
Well, as Bill Shankly used to say at Liverpool, he would never overanalyze what the other team was going to do or how the other team was going to play, because all he was worried about was his strategy and how
100%.
his team were going to play. And we could see some more of that, I think.
He shouldn't be worried about Rishi Sunak now.
No. Thank you, Desi from New Cross. Thank you for that question. Next question, please, folks. From Jim Rafferty. I love this question. For me, the question increasingly arises as to whether our way of doing politics is becoming redundant. Are we at the end of something rather than, as one might traditionally expect with the prospect of a changing government, some kind of a fresh start?
I think both. I think it's a great question, Jim. Thank you. So are we at the end of something? Well, that's for sure. And we've talked quite a bit on the podcast about that. How will someone start the 21st century? Why are we still somehow trapped in the Thatcherite economic orthodoxy when the world has changed, the challenges have changed? Why are we still thinking about politics in terms of the old categories? Why are we not paying? We should pay attention to conventional media because it has it is still a very, very important force. But we need to engage much more with new forms of media: X, TikTok, YouTube, podcasting, Substack, independent media in all its forms. And, we have to confront, and this is, I think, the huge progressive problem, is the need to understand what the populist right got right, not in terms of the content, but they understood that emotion plays as big a part as fact. Now, that doesn't mean that progressives should just sling evidence out the window and start just telling Boris Johnson or Donald Trump style lies, but they do have to have narratives that work.
And they need to be willing to, and not embarrassed of that emotion.
And not embarrassed of it. And this is, my worry about Starmer on that front is that I respect his sort of technocratic background. He is a distinguished public servant. He was a good director of public prosecutions. But governing a nation is not the same as running the CPS. And you do need, even if your natural tendency is to be quite beige, quite low key, you do need a narrative. Now, he's had little goes at it, hasn't he, with his St. George's flag, patriotism, and one or two other things. But I do think, I do think we're at the end of something. And I do hope we're at the beginning of a fresh start. I mean, just to take one random example, I think that, and I've been thinking quite a bit about this lately, is that there is a new Europeanism, and not just...
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Which I think has very little to do with Brexit and that, and everything to do with the huge importance that Europe is going to have in a reconfigured world.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think what maybe changed, or certainly what became clear to me at the Brexit referendum, was that the country is split not so much left and right anymore, but between fearful, not fearful, open, closed, defensive, open towards communities, a willingness to be part of a community, and no understanding that is the route in which lies safety, prosperity, and harmony and happiness. And where you absolutely hit the nail on the head is by saying where the Leave campaign was so brilliant, and this has been symptomatic of what's followed, is the tendency now, or the the way that little specific things get blown up massively out of proportion and become the debate.
Yeah.
And you can talk about the boats crossing,
Yes.
how that 1% of migration, but it's become the whole debate.
Image,
the fixation of politics, even though it's not the fixation of the public. But, hopefully we'll find out that Conservative fixation is wholesale rejected at the ballot box whenever the election is. But this is where I think everyone's got to be as clever as the right have been clever for the last 20 years.
Well, more clever, I would say, because I think that, progressive policies, unlike right-wing policies, do have to be evidence-based, right? I'm old-fashioned like that. I like a bit of evidence, me. But they then have to be presented in a way that has a narrative and an emotional impact.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah,
really
and the
hard.
willingness to be combative,
and this is a new setup. I mean, it really is.
So my people ask us where are we on the New European in the great scale of things, and I've always thought, that we are, for better or worse, a centrist position, but that's always been damned by, like it's some kind of wishy-washy.
It's not splitting the difference.
But there's what I prefer to call it is a radical centre, which is where ideas actually get done, where momentum is maintained, where it's not about fighting old battles that were redundant 20 years ago.
Take a good radical centre idea is we need massive, immediate, hugely expensive measures on climate change.
Right, exactly right.
That is what I would personally call a radical centrist measure.
Yeah.
Right? Now, someone else might call it radical progressive.
Yeah.
I don't care.
That's why I really did think it was a misstep for Labour to come down and say we're not going to spend that.
Yeah.
When they could have said, we don't know what we'll be able to spend, but believe you me, this is number one in our priority because the earth is burning, folks.
I think, urgent centrism is still where the possibility of real change lies.
Talking of which, mate, did you see the splash in The Guardian the other day about the scientists all saying it's going to be 2.5 degrees rise minimum,
Terrifying.
Which is utterly catastrophic.
I mean, it is overused expression, an extinction level event.
It really,
right?
I mean, people say, the scientists saying, if it goes this high, then it's game over.
It is. I mean, well, it's game over for us.
Jesus.
I mean,
Christ.
this is the thing that a book that had a massive impact on me was David Wallace Wells's The Uninhabitable Earth, which makes the point very, very in very readable and detailed way that what is happening is that the Earth is being made uninhabitable for us. The Earth will survive,
of course. Yeah.
Now a lot of other species will die, which is scarcely just, right? Mm-hmm. But what is not in question here is the survival of the Earth. It's ours.
Yes.
Do we want to do something about it or not?
Yeah.
Now that to me is a radical centrist question.
Yeah, and that, absolutely.
I hope that's the best I can do. I hope that the new government adopts such a strategy.
Yeah. Well, we veered off from the end of the Tories to the end of the planet there in about 60 seconds.
Well, the end of humanity, anyway.
Yes, sorry. Yes, yeah. Absolutely right. Thank you, Jim. Fascinating question and well phrased. Thank you. Next question, please.
I'm listening in Sydney. Well, that's a nice place to listen. And even from here, I can see the disdain Laura Gunsburg holds Kia Starma in. Please, can you evaluate your comments that she's not a Tory after the footage of her talking about Kia Starma visiting non-league footy grounds? That's Dermot Carlin. This, I think, was with reference to on her podcast.
Yeah.
She observed that Starma systematically goes dressed as his centrist dad clobber, no suits, no big deal to non-league football grounds, and there's a certain stage.
And I should say we had a bucket load of similar kind of disdain.
Why are you defending Laura Kay?
Yeah, loads actually, probably more than we've had on any other topic. so well done, Laura Gunsburg, for triggering a lot of people. But and we had promoted her as being a good interviewer.
Yeah,
that's why this came about. I must say, in sympathy with Dermot's point, I did watch that clip, and I don't think it was Laura's finest hour if avoiding this accusation is the point, because she did seem really contemptuous and sneering.
Here's the case of the defence, which is she is a sharp journalist by temperament, and she's given Sunak multiple kickings over the years, in similar vein about his tech bro act, and that's what she does. She tries to deconstruct the spin with which politicians present themselves.
Yeah.
So she's an equal opportunity snarker, right? I think the really important thing is to nail, irrespective of that particular moment on a podcast, nail the sort of quite enduring myth that she's a Tory,
right?
Because what this came from during the Johnson years, it fell to her as political editor to report routinely what was going on inside Number 10, which was frequently deranged and mad, and she was just saying, "This is what I'm being told." And I think a lot of people thought that she was, by reporting it, endorsing it.
Yeah.
And she certainly wasn't. And if anyone wants to, the proof in the pudding is go to iPlayer, watch Laura's stunningly good 3-part documentary State of Chaos, which is basically as good a televisual account of the downfall of the Tories there's been so far.
Yeah.
She is, and then say this is a Conservative sympathiser. Yeah. She is not that.
Yeah. And also I'd say about Laura Gunsburg that she's such a clever person.
Yeah.
If she wanted, whether she's a Tory or not, I've got no idea, and I don't really care.
I have no idea.
But if she was a Tory and she was trying to big up the Tory party, she wouldn't do it by going out slagging Kia Starma off for being in non-league football clubs. And I did think the overall point was fascinating, actually, and it's something that hadn't occurred to me until she spoke it, was that there was this deliberate policy to get Kia Starma into non-league football clubs because it represented him as a man of the people.
It actually,
great insight.
It's an interesting question, because this is on the podcast that she does after she's done her TV show on a Sunday, right? Now, on the TV show, she's very formal,
buttoned up,
scripted, buttoned up,
yeah.
And then she does. She metaphorically kicks off her shoes and does a kind of after show podcast, right?
Yeah.
Where she's necessarily, letting a bit of the adrenaline out. Now, that I think it points to a broader problem for the BBC about podcasting.
Yeah.
Which is podcasting, as we try and do, is informal. It can be quite sort of to and fro.
Yeah, loose.
You can say things which you then think 5 minutes. I certainly do. Yeah. Oh, maybe actually.
Matt was right all along.
Exactly. Yeah. I always say that, but that's it's in my contract, listeners. Right? I checked it. My new European contract says the final clause is Matt Kelly is always right. So, I'm a loyal employee. But it is actually quite difficult to be a BBC podcaster.
Yeah.
Because the informality that makes great podcasts, what they are, is very hard to maintain under the terms of trade that a BBC journalist is expected to maintain.
Definitely.
This is a strategy that they have adopted. So,
well, I've just remembered why we were praising Laura in the first place, which was the way that she opened up Michelle Mone and Doug Barrowman like a can of worms. And I'll stand by that to anyone. It was a brilliantly conducted interview.
She's a very, very good interviewer.
Very good.
She really
and just in case Dermot's doubtful, I did expect that interview to be a car crash. I did worry, is Laura going to nail these people? And she played it absolutely beautifully.
Another example of how she gives people the rope to hang themselves was her famous interview with Dominic Cummings, which you can watch on YouTube, in which Cummings just reveals the most astonishing things, like, within days of the 2019 election, he and his mates were planning to get rid of Boris Johnson. Now, that's what makes her such a good interviewer.
Yes.
She has that quality, which I think Emily Maitlis has too, which is to allow people the space to damn themselves. And that's a very rare gift.
Yeah,
because journalists like the sound of their own voice normally.
They do. That's right. And also, by the way, folks, it's bloody hard, that job. If you could,
very hard.
If people think it's like what we're doing now, just sitting here chatting crap,
it's much harder.
It's very hard, and cut these professional broadcasters a bit of slack. Guys.
Laura, in common with a regrettably high number of female political journalists, has had to have security measures
yeah.
Because of all the online
I remember
trolling
at the party conferences. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I know of another female journalist who's had to, with some help from their employer, but not all, make radical adaptations to their security at home, their family home.
No, that's
because
terrible.
this. So, of course, everyone is richly entitled to say that person is being too biased. That's fine.
Yeah.
But remember that there are consequences of the sort of trolling and online mobbing.
Yeah, and of course, Dermot, not saying remotely that you're
no.
In that bucket.
Dermot's question's a good one.
Your question's a great one. Thank you so much for asking it. Next question, please. From Ian Thompson. Is it my turn or your turn?
I think it's your turn.
Okay. What are the chances of a Lib Dem Labour government after the next general election, so a hung parliament? Could this be why the Lib Dems are quiet about rejoining the EU? Current position mysteriously mirroring Labour's. Thank you, Ian Thompson, for that question. What do you think?
Well, I guess this is coming to view because our great leader, national leader, following the triumph of the local and mayoral elections, Rishi Sunak, leapt onto a single Sky News analysis to assert that there was going to be a hung parliament after the next election.
Let's pause for a second. You've got the leader of the incumbent party,
the Prime Minister,
yelling about the fact that when he asks the country, the most likely event is going to be a rejection and a hung parliament.
You tell me I'm doing no good. Well, let me correct you. There's going to be a hung parliament. Anyway, this, of course, has run as a story, and I ought to say, that on Thursday, the Times YouGov poll showed that things are looking really bad for Labour. They've got only 30-point lead over the Tories.
Oh dear,
18 plays 48.
Wow.
18 plays 48.
Wow.
Which is back to Liz Truss catastrophe levels. So
wow.
I think this may well be a hypothetical question, but it's always good to think about it. Okay, well, Ian is right that the Lib Dems have gone quiet about rejoining the EU because they don't want Brexit to be an issue in the blue wall seats they're targeting, which is a little bit sad because you'd hope the Lib Dems of all parties would keep up the flame of at least greater collaboration. I think that it won't happen. I mean, interestingly, Starma has ruled out any form of coalition with the SNP on the grounds that they're not a pro-independence party, Labour. But he's hedged on the Lib Dems, I guess, just to. But I think the Lib Dems are a really, really hyper-democratic party, and the last time this was an issue, and it really was an issue, 2010, when Nick Clegg had to get the deal with the Tories past his party. It was touch and go. He really had to get it past them. Votes, MPs. Everyone had to be on board, and it took a lot of persuasion and bringing in of Ashdown.
And it was seen as a bloody disaster, wasn't it?
And exactly. I mean, the problem was that in the 2015 election, they were down 48 seats to 8. So I don't think that at the moment the Lib Dems are wild at the prospect of...
But imagine this, Matt. Imagine this scenario, right? And I am obviously just fantasizing here. But imagine...
I know where you're going.
Yeah, but imagine that they do have a coalition.
Yeah.
And the price for the coalition is Ed Davey saying, we want some meaningful rejoining of the European Union.
It would be rather good, wouldn't it?
I mean, he'd have a bloody statue as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, look... I suppose my answer
and
to Ian
I'm sorry,
is...
just to finish it, wouldn't that then give Starmer, whose inclination is closer links, the excuse to say, well, it's not where we wanted to go, but it's for the stability and security of the country. We're going to have to agree.
In fact, it's a great prospect. The first reason it's a great prospect is that the coalition government. I mean, you can argue about austerity and all that, but actually, it as a mechanism, it worked really, really well, which was the checks and balances within it were terrific. And as you say, it gave each party cover for the things that it didn't want to claim as its own. So Cameron was quite keen on marriage equality, right? But he told his lot, the Lib Dems want it, which was not really true. But wouldn't it be great, as you say, if Starmer could come in make Davey Deputy Prime Minister, or God knows whatever role you play, and say, well, I don't want to go to Brussels, but I'm required in order to keep the NHS ticking over to go and meet Ursula. Sorry. And
by the way, it's just occurred to me, it's a bloody good idea as well. So
when I got there, so we're in favour of this now. I like this.
Ian, fingers crossed.
Thank you, Ian.
Everything crossed. Let's hope it comes to pass. But I think we both doubt it. But let's hope it comes to pass.
It would be great.
Next question, please.
Low turnouts do not suggest an eagerness to throw the Tories out. The mayoral elections show that when they think it matters, voters turn out, I think. Could complacency and gestures destroy Labour? James via Spotify.
Well, I don't think so. I think low turnouts and local elections go hand in hand, unfortunately, because, local politics is every bit as important as national politics to so many people. But I do think we can anticipate a high turnout at this election.
I think so.
I think people are so fed up, don't you?
I think that in the same way that regrettably the turnout in the Brexit referendum was high, I think that this election, I might be wrong, but I think it's going to be quite a day.
Yeah.
Because the anger at this government, justified, is palpable.
Oh.
You can sense it in the street.
Yeah.
And the prospect of 6 more months of the buggers is, I think, going to make it even worse.
Yeah.
This notion that Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have, that they should play it long because by the time they could go to January, people will suddenly be feeling a sort of wave of gratitude for better economic. This is pure insanity.
Yeah.
Honestly, when it were done, if we're done quickly, get it over with. I mean, actually, Sunak, if he wants to retain any dignity, should go as soon as possible.
I just think there's a tsunami of absolute contempt is going to break over all of their heads. And
yes,
they are going to get wiped out. I really do.
I don't think it was. I think they were always in trouble, but I think in 2022, when Boris Johnson blew up the British state with his law breaking, and Liz Truss blew up the economy, the electorate said, right, we've had enough of this lot. And we're now in 2024, and they're still there.
And Sunak himself, having had the opportunity to represent himself as a new leaf, the other side, a change, a sensible technocrat, as you call him, he's completely blown that just through sheer incompetence.
He's no good.
He's just rubbish.
It mystifies his supporters, some of whom still think of him as a wonderful guy and talk about how great Rishi is. Well, he may be a great guy. I don't know him. But he is a terrible prime minister.
He's the Eric Ten Hag of politics. He really, he's still there. And he's still sort of saying everything's fine, but it's anybody with eyes can see he's shit.
I mean, it is often forgotten, and not surprisingly, when you've had Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak in quick succession, that being Prime Minister is a very, very odd job and a very difficult job, and very, very few people have even the beginnings of the capacity to do it well.
Yeah.
And Rishi Sunak is. He may have come top in everything he's ever done before. I don't know. But he is no good at this job.
No.
And the sooner we get the chance to let him go off and make his billions in California or whatever he is destined to do, the better all round.
Yeah, good. Thank you, James, for that question. Julia in Edinburgh, next question. And I think this is probably the last one. I know the two Matts are big Beatles fans, but isn't it overkill to re-release Let It Be? Haven't we just seen all this in Get Back?
Well, now,
tell us the background.
This is, I think, I'm fairly sure, a reference to the fact that Michael Lindsay Hogg's famous movie, Let It Be, which came out just about a month after the Beatles split up, May 1970, and got a rather surly reception because it felt like a breakup movie, even though it hadn't been filmed at the time of the breakup. They went during the film. They then went on to record Abbey Road.
That's right.
But Peter Jackson, he of Lord of the Rings fame, had the brilliant idea of going back and taking all of Lindsay Hogg's many hours, 56 hours, I think, of footage, and turning them into a 3-part documentary, which was on Disney Plus. It came out in 21, I think.
And it should be said, is one of the most incredible documentaries of artistic endeavour, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's like watching Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. It's incredible.
Watching these four, far from hating each other.
Yeah.
I mean, there are tensions. You can see
course,
because they're no longer four Liverpool lads. They are complex adults with their own lives, but what's actually remarkable is how much they still love each other, right? So what then happened was Jackson, I think, felt, and Lindsay Hogg, who I know actually, and is an amazing guy and has lived an incredible life, which included the question of whether his real father was Orson Welles.
No way.
Yeah,
that's extraordinary.
And he worked with the Stones and the Beatles, and he's 84 now.
He comes across as brilliantly as
he's
impresario.
He's a wonderful man, and he's very generous and decent guy. He sends little notes and writes little cartoons in them.
Oh, wonderful!
He's a wonderful man,
yeah.
And I think Jackson felt, well, yeah, but we should restore Let It Be and let it have a new life, and so they've done it. And I watched it yesterday, and Jackson has restored it fully. So the sound is good, the grainy quality of the film has been restored, and you now see it for what it I think was meant to be, which is a celebration.
Right.
It's the four guys. Absolutely, you can sense the end is not far off.
Yeah.
But they're laughing. I mean, watching McCartney and Lennon smile at one another, laugh at one another, the private jokes. Yeah. There are occasional moments of tension, but not many. Watching George Harrison at a piano helping Ringo write Octopus's Garden.
Yeah.
It's great. And then, of course, the famous rooftop concert interspliced with these wonderful images of people in 1969. Girls in miniskirts looking up, guys in bowler hats looking up. You think, God, it was a long time ago. And so we are big Beatles fans, and unapologetically so. And I think that it's not overkill. I'm really glad. I will admit, I'm personally glad for Michael, but I'm also glad for the Beatles and the public that Let It Be will now have a new life.
Well, I am.
You'll love it, by the way.
Well, listen, I've already seen it.
You've already seen it, have you?
No, I haven't seen the new version.
But
I've seen the original when I was about 5 years old, and I remember it so clearly. It was the year that the Netherlands played Germany in the World Cup. So what's that? Is that 74?
Oh, you saw it after.
Was it? Anyway, I'll find out. But I remember we were on holiday in a farm in Wales, and it was on the telly, and I remember sitting there watching it in this communal living room with other people, and I've always it's stuck in my head,
of
obviously,
course,
and of course subsequently I went to look for it, and the thing we haven't said is that it's not been available.
I saw it.
For a long
before
time,
this, I'd only seen it on a bootleg 80s VHS.
Right.
And it was crap. I mean, well, the film wasn't crap, but the
quality
was so bad that it was barely.
Because I think the Beatles pulled it.
They did. They never liked it, and it had a brief theatrical release with lots of very, very snippy reviews, and then it was re-released in the 80s on I think VHS or
Was it?
Max. But the point is very, very briefly.
Right.
Like for such a short. This is why there are bootlegs, because people did in those days lots of copying of VHS.
Right. It was 90. I've just googled it. It was 1974. 1974. So I was 5 years old.
5 years old,
and it was on the telly. Yeah.
So the young Matt Kelly getting his Beatles vibe on already.
Yeah. Do you know what else was there? So this was we talked on Friday about glorious television ages, but this obviously wasn't too bad either, because I remember there was the Germany-Netherlands World Cup. This was all in this week. There was Let It Be on telly, and there was also a 10-part episode of The Godfather made for TV.
Oh, famous, yeah.
Yeah, with all sorts of scenes that weren't in either Godfather 1 or 2. It was, and I still remember that as well. So it was an amazing week.
I mean, I will say this about my own kind of fixation, which is that one of the reviews I read of the new Let It Be, the one that's on Disney Plus, described the long and winding road as sentimental.
Oh.
And I thought, that is fighting talk.
Right. Hold my coat.
No, hold my coat. Yes. I mean, really hold my pint of Diet Coke, you know? It's and I thought, there is an extent to which I have to be less protective, but I can't.
Well, actually, didn't Phil Spector add all those strings and everything?
Yes, I mean, then we get into the weeds of Phil Spector's production, and there was there not quite recently a remastered edition,
a
despectorized. But now,
despectorized.
I think look, the Beatles, again, we talk about checkpoint, the cultural checkpoint, Charlie. They've made it through to the younger generation in a way I don't think the Stones have.
No, it's interesting, isn't it?
So I think the taste for new Beatles material, restored Beatles material is still out there, and I don't think it's overkill. I understand why people think, wouldn't it would be great if we just had another documentary about Drake and Kendrick Lamar hating each other.
Yeah.
But which I actually don't care about. Perhaps I should.
Or Taylor Swift and her boyfriend.
Yes,
or something
but
like
I think this is music that will be part of British culture as long as there is British culture and world culture, actually.
Absolutely right.
And I refuse to resolve from my position.
I think your position is firm,
and which is yours.
I will support you.
Shoulder to shoulder.
Shoulder to shoulder against all those Rolling Stones.
What did Blair
fans.
say to Bush? We'll be there at the first, we were there at the last.
This isn't a time for catchphrase. What did he say?
He said, this is no time for sound bites. But I do feel the hand of history on my shoulder.
If only you could see Matt Dancona's face as he does that Tony Blair impression. It'd be worth every penny.
The two Matts, do you need two of them? I mean, this question... Do you need any of them?
Julia, thank you so much for your question. As ever, if you want to give us any feedback, tell us how much you love the show, how much you hate the show, that's fine. Email in with your questions to 2matts@tnepublishing.com. That's the number 2, MATTS. Or you can drop us a message on Spotify if you happen to be listening there. Thank you as ever to our team at Rethink Audio, Matt Hill, assisted by Ollie Peart. Thank you guys for the production. And don't forget your subscription offer. If you like these podcasts, you'll love The New European. Go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2Matts. There's a link in the show notes. So until next week.
Have a great week.
Have a fantastic weekend. See you on Friday.
See you then.